On the 1st of June this year, I finally passed my fourth as well as the final APICS certification exam. Over the past 6 years, I have earned one certification approximately every 18 months, dedicating more than 1,000 hours in total to the preparation. Based on my own research, I appear to be the only supply chain professional on LinkedIn who has completed all the four APICS certifications before the age of 30. In this very first video on my channel, I'd like to briefly share my background, what the preparation journey looked like, and how these exams have impacted both my career and my personal life. If you're interested in APICS certifications or a career in supply chain management, don't forget to subscribe. There's much more valuable content coming soon. So, let me start with a quick introduction of myself. I originally studied engineering, but later transitioned into business. I was first introduced to supply chain during my graduate studies. In my second year of grad school in 2018, I came across APICS, and that's when I began studying supply chain systematically. During my first and the second internships, I passed the CPIM Part 1 and Part 2 respectively. Later, I started working in France and continued studying while working until I finally completed all the four certifications this year. You may have noticed that in the most recent exam, CTSC, released in 2023, I scored 336, which is quite high. However, for CLTD, which I took after CPIM and the CSCP, I only scored 310. These two scores each have their own stories, which I will share with you later. Actually, at the beginning, I didn't plan to complete all the four certifications. If you search APICS on LinkedIn, you will see that most people have only one certification, very few have two, and those with three or more are almost always trainers or educators with over 20 years of experience. So I'm not sharing this to show off. In fact, if your goal is strictly career-oriented, one certification is often more than enough, depending on your job role or career path. Taking more than you need is actually a waste of resources, time, money, and opportunity cost. It's a heavy load if there is no clear purpose. In lean management, there is a concept of the 8 types of waste, and unused skills is one of them. So here maybe we can take a quick look or quick review of the 8 waste. Personally, I remember them by thinking through the supply chain from pre-production to the production itself, and then to post-production, and finally to the supply chain as a whole. These are also frequently tested in CPIM and the CSCP. First, before production even begins, we need to procure raw materials. If we purchase too much, it leads to excess inventory. That's waste number one. Then materials will wait in the preparation, the pre-production area. There is a delay before production starts, and that waiting time is waste number two. During production, some steps add no value from the customer's perspective. That's over-processing, waste number three. After production, if we produce more than needed or produce defective products, that becomes waste number 4 and 5. From a broader supply chain view, unnecessary movements by people or machines count as motion waste. And then there is transportation. Why is transportation considered a waste? Because in an ideal world, production and consumption happen at the same place. So no transportation would be needed. Finally, we have the eighth waste, unused human skills. That's why collecting certifications you can't apply is also a form of waste, unless, of course, your goal is to teach APICS. For me, I decided that I wanted to be a supply chain knowledge sharer back when I was preparing for CPIM Part 2. Since 2020, I have been planning for this channel. So, when we talk about motivation, my core reason is simple. I genuinely love supply chain. It's not just a work tool for me, it has completely changed the way I think in life too. Another reason I pursued certification was because the gaps in formal education. I have taken supply chain courses in both France and the UK, and to be honest, most of the content was quite narrow. Often, a single course focused on just one concept or formula. The most memorable classes I had were actually supply chain games where the entire class role played as retailers or different tiers of the supply chain. That helped me really and deeply understand EOQ, economic order quantity, and the bullwhip effect. But that's just a tiny slice of what supply chain encompasses. An end-to-end supply chain often includes planning, sourcing, transforming, order management, fulfillment, and reverse logistics. So, what we learned in school was far from enough to build a complete supply chain perspective. That's why I started APICS content on my own to both satisfy my interest and make up for what school didn't cover. APICS knowledge isn't just for passing exams. In any discipline, exams are never the end goal. What APICS really gave me was practical value at work. Even when I first entered the job market, I could quickly understand what my colleagues or even directors were saying. I could engage in real conversations, and it's like learning first grade materials before even starting school. Not expert level, but definitely ahead of the curve. And as I worked, those foundational concepts will also become clearer. For example, CSCP discusses the difference between general optimization and sub-optimization. Within a supply chain, different departments often have conflicting goals. The production team wants fewer setups and longer production runs for efficiency. Sales wants high inventory for every SKU to ensure perfect service levels. Finance, on the other hand, wants to minimize inventory altogether. In reality, you can't optimize for everyone at the same time. Global optimization means you have to sacrifice some local preferences to find a dynamic balance. The example I just gave only includes three departments on one performance, but in real life, the conflicts are much more complex. So, if you can already think like a supply chain manager early in your career, you will find it much easier to communicate with leadership and senior colleagues because you are speaking the same language. You are aligned instead of having to constantly backtrack and explain very basic concepts. Beyond work, supply chain knowledge has improved my life in very tangible ways. Around this time last year, I bought my first apartment. I built an apartment buying evaluation model kind of like a score model, breaking down and quantifying every need. I also eliminated unnecessary agents or intermediaries in the buying process. I skipped the real estate agent and avoided their over 5% fee. I also skipped the loan broker and negotiated directly with the bank for a mortgage that was 1% lower than the market rate. All in all, I saved over 60,000 euros for the apartment. Most importantly, the end user of the house, the hostess, is highly satisfied. That's what we call customer satisfaction. Aside from big life decisions, supply chain logic helps in daily life too. Take the tubing system, for example. For slow moving household goods like rice, flour, soy sauce, or vinegar, I always keep two units, one in use, one in reserve. When the bottle in use runs out, I replace it with the one from the cabinet and add a new one to the shopping list. That way, we never run out of soy sauce, but we also don't overstock. It saves storage space, avoids obsolete stock, and requires very little effort to manage. It's only when I run out that I am triggered to restock. Otherwise, I don't have to think about it at all. This is essentially the logic behind Kanban in lean production. Another example is the 5S methodology. When I used to clean up my room or kitchen, I would randomly alternate between throwing things out, organizing, and cleaning. It was inefficient, and I didn't even realize it. After learning 5S, I became systematic. First, remove the trash or items that don't belong in the space. Second, return everything to its proper place. Finally, clean. It's simple but powerful system, and it comes from supply chain thinking. Finally, to wrap up things, and something you may take away from this video, don't blindly chase certifications. In most cases, CPIM Part 1, also known as Basics of Supply Chain Management, is more than enough. If you are just starting your career and want to build a solid knowledge foundation, reading the CPIM BSCM material is a great place to start. Another excellent beginner resource is Introduction to Materials Management, or we call it IMM. It's almost equivalent to CPIM BSCM in content. For my own exam, I only studied this book and passed my CPIM Part 1 without reading the official APICS material. In the next video, we will dive deep into two main topics, a breakdown and comparison of the 4 certifications and my tips on exam preparation and strategy. After that, I will also share my future plans for this channel. That's all I wanted to share in today's video.